It's a story as old as time. You are young, fresh-faced, and your heart is yet to be broken. If you've lived a happy family life, then perhaps you've seen it in your parents, seen how the sheen of their eyes gloss over when they hear that familiar voice, when arms brush against each other and tones soften. You know what it looks like when a piece of someone is palmed by another. You think you have met love before. A relationship is defined as the way in which two or more people or things are connected. You have a relationship with your mother and your father in much the same definition as you have a relationship with your toaster or your chair. You are connected. And the people you come to love are often connected to you. I have loved a few, less than 10, more than 2, with hopes these feelings will find room to renew. Slew is a word Lily Allen invented in place of the word slain, when something great is brought to its knees, when something insidious or monstrous is tamed, and in what is probably the most common context of the word being used, when a dragon is killed. Killed is an interesting term we use against many things that are not alive. Here's one for you. Damn bro, this long-ass existential video intro really killed my vibe, boss man. Okay. I'm really stretching with this one, so hear me out. Bossmen. Bosses. Bosses is a common term given to like the extra strong enemies in a game that will often punctuate accomplishments or story beats within the video game's narrative. The next big part of a game often comes behind the next big boss. Relationships often feel like they punctuate your life in a very similar sense. Often, a relationship feels like an entire chapter of your being caught within its rose-tinted beginnings and its bittersweet ends. Bosses are like relationships. You love, you lose, and hopefully you grow. This is a relationship with bosses. Oh yeah, and a quick spoiler warning for all of the following games. The best case scenario for an ended relationship is that even when it's over, you can leave with fond memories that bloom into a stinging nostalgia. Maybe it's your first, maybe it's your most recent. Let's have a look at love. I love Brock for being the first of many gym leaders. I love Hollow Knight for being the end of many arseholes. I love the Laughing Octopus from Metal Gear Solid 4. This lady was such an interesting fight. Kojima has always had a fetish for fucking with the player, and never has this been more present in this boss fight. The Laughing Octopus is like a swimsuit model wearing some crazy, super high-tech battle armor equipped with like those Dr. Octopus tentacles. This gives her crazy mobility, crazy defenses, and also like fuckery over the concept of camouflage. Like a lot of bosses across gaming history, the Laughing Octopus has states where she's vulnerable and you ought to use your weapons to damage her, and states when she's busy or attacking or like doing the sonic spinball bullshit.
You're killing me, woman!
But between these standard boss states, you have these really creative games of Where's Waldo, where she uses her crazy techno superpowers to disguise herself as scenery, dead enemies, friendly faces, electrical wiring, anything that you can think of, really. This boss loses its charm after you've played it more than once because everything isn't such a big surprise, but still, it is just the most delightful mindfuck having to figure out this absolute loon of a boss. Good boss. The Dark Side Kingdom Boss Blitz Tower from Super Mario Odyssey is a super lovely one. And it's really simple, some games need to get the hang of this. It expands on the bosses that it incorporates in a meaningful way. In Super Mario Odyssey, the Broodals are the rabbits that you have to fight throughout the game, and because Super Mario is a Japanese-owned property, it only makes sense that they just give them a big battle mech at the end of the game. Now, I'm what they call a pro gamer. I have at least 2 Twitters, 2 Reddits, and I'm in denial about being a furry, so as you can tell, these games are pretty easy for me. So the hope is that when they make you fight them again on the Dark Side Kingdom Boss Blitz Tower, they do something to make the difficulty a bit harder. So not only do they make you fight each of the Broodals one after the other, they also change the final big mech boss. They change the method that you can beat it. In its first incarnation, they give you Dennis, which is a sweet and spicy time. It's quite easy to beat the boss with this guy. But in the Boss Blitz Tower Edition, they give you Ronald. Ronald controls very differently than Dennis, but the boss is constructed in such a way that it can be beaten with either Ronald or Dennis. More ways to play, more fun. Bad rabbits, good bosses. Captain Quark is a gormless minger. Just wanted to get that off my chest. Much like your ex-wives, there are a multitude of reasons bosses can leave a bad taste in your mouth. Sometimes needs are not met, which can be caused by a lack of communication or poor game design. Sometimes people are just bad for you. I'm convinced that nobody should have to go through the Adamantoise or Yzmat from the Final Fantasy games. Sometimes guys are just unlikable pricks. Ergo, Captain Quark. Elodie. Oh my god. I think it's Elodie. Elodie is the final boss of the turn-based strategy game Wargroove. It's typical for missions in Wargroove to take a while, as you often have to navigate a small army across a long battlefield. This is the case for most missions, including the final boss, Elodie. Any of you Fire Emblem fans are about to be acutely aware of the pain I'm about to discuss. The most common lose condition in the game is having one of your commanders die in battle. In story missions you'll mostly have 1 or 2, but for this epic quest you have 7 commanders. Every single one of your major units has to stay alive throughout the whole fight. That is already a huge bump up in difficulty to the normal quests in the game. But secondarily to this, Elodie will periodically take over your units. She will take control of one of your 7 commanders and have them fuck up the rest of them. All of these factors make for a long and grueling fight. And unlike Fire Emblem Three Houses, you can't just go back 3 moves when you mess up. You will just lose the match and have to start over. I want to be clear that I don't feel as though this fight is poorly designed. It's just unforgivingly difficult. When you actually finish this quest, you feel less like you've accomplished something epic and more like you've survived some horrid trauma. It's wickedly difficult. The Alatreon from the Monster Hunter series has had multiple iterations across Monster Hunter history. The Alatreon is classified as an Elder Dragon, which just means it's an extra difficult bad lad. However, this one can actually switch between different elements on the fly, which is what makes it so unique. Monster Hunter is rarely a very forgiving game. It demands sufficient levels of skill, preparation, trial and error, and frankly, just grinding.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
However, quests in Monster Hunter often have a very long time limit. You are given up to 50 minutes to complete most quests in the game. This is generous, but a double-edged sword. The con is that certain quests can drag on. It's rare to enjoy gameplay sessions where you have to have hard focus for like 40 minutes at a time, but the pro is that it gives you sufficient time to beat almost anything if you have weaker weapons or are just not doing that well. As long as you're doing just well enough to stay alive, you can normally tough through it if you've been toughing through it for 50 odd minutes. This means that alongside your general skill or equipment level, your survivability is a really valuable characteristic. The Alatreon ignores this entirely. He's got what I'd describe as a damage gate. One super powerful move called Eschaton Judgment that you cannot dodge, you cannot block. It is so powerful that it is guaranteed to kill you unless you have done sufficient damage to the dragon earlier in the quest. He will also try this move 2 to 3 times per the fight. And whether you're playing with 1 to 4 players, you only have 3 lives total, so you can get fucked over very easily. What I'm trying to get at is that in contrast to other quests in the game, this one particular quest forces you to play both extremely efficiently and with very high level equipment, because your survivability means nothing in this. If you can't do enough damage per second to meet this figurative damage gate, then you've already lost. And it's probably something that there is a strategy for. You're encouraged to use a lot of elemental weapons, but it's not made completely clear. It just says use elemental weapons. It could be use elemental weapons on specific body parts. parts, work to break the body parts. There's different strategies that you tend to implement in Monster Hunter, and because it doesn't give you this specificity, you feel a bit left in the dark, throwing yourself at this thing that will keep chewing you out and wasting your time. Just like the previous example, I wouldn't say that the monster is poorly designed. It looks gorgeous, its moveset is creative, the fight is interesting. It's just this one damage gate mechanic that gives me such a bad time playing against it. Monster Hunter World for me is a near perfect game, but when it designs things that are just, yeah, it's a blemish on what would otherwise be pretty amazing. But much like in a relationship, it's important to recognize what you can and cannot tolerate, whether that's from a boss or a lover. Relationships are cloudy as fuck. We don't always do what's right for us. And when you really, really care about something or someone, it's easy to forego the good decisions with the bad ones. Speaking of which... N is pretty hot. He's a good boy among bad boys. I don't want to fight N. Toriel's got big mom energy. She just wants to keep you safe and feed you pies and ting. I don't want to fight Toriel. In the gruesome year that was 2020, I played the entirety of Ghost of Tsushima. I platinumed that game. And while the game was fun and interesting,
Good grief, he's naked!
amongst all the Mongols, they also make you murder a lot of Mongolian dogs. I don't want to murder dogs. Great Grey Wolf Sif is a good boy. A good boy that you are required to murder! Dark Souls doesn't do massively obvious storytelling, so there's little narrative context to deter you from fucking up this one oversized good dog. However, when delving into his lore, he's actually protecting his master's grave. Aww. This boss is not optional. You have to kill a grieving dog in pursuit of progress. I don't want to kill Sif. In the video game Bravely Second, which I need to point out is one of the single greatest JRPGs of all time, there's a really interesting mechanic. To unlock most of the jobs in this game, you need to defeat that job's asterisk holder. Basically, if you want to be a thief, you have to beat the master thief in the game. But this game has so many classes that they can actually afford to be stingy about it, so they make you choose. The game will often put you in these moral dilemmas where you have to pick between two of the asterisk holders. You help one and fight the other, and the one that you fight is the class that you will then get. This is sometimes over petty squabbles, but other times it's over really big, interesting philosophical questions like, do we feed a starving town, or do we take the resources that we would have given that starving town and instead use it to research sustainable energy? That's a real example from the game.
Couldn't they go easy on the red pepper? So, what's somnial energy?
Why, none other than the ultimate energy source. We've been trying to crack its secrets for quite some time. It doesn't pollute the air like fossil fuels, and unlike crystals, there's no danger of it running out of control.
So here's one actual example that I personally struggled with. So here's the argument. One party supports mixed schooling, and the other party supports schooling where boys and girls are separated. They're in two different schools. So the Master Monk in the game wants to support mixed schooling, but the Master Valkyrie thinks that boys and girls should be educated separately. This is a really tough one for me because I support mixed schooling, but the monk class, for me, is stronger than the Valkyrie class. So I want to fight the monk.
A future where boys and girls study together, laughing and crying and falling in and out of love. That would be true heaven.
The game will put you in situations where you actually have to go against your own morals for strategic superiority. But I don't want to fight the monk, dude. He's a monk, man. He's peaceful. He's actually not peaceful. Like, canonically, he's a bit of like a big fucking sweaty meatball. Before I touch on the last category, I want to breeze through a few of the classics. The clingy, those so overwhelmingly infatuated or cripplingly insecure that they just don't give you room to breathe. The top dogs for this category would be Seymour from Final Fantasy X, who shows up 4 times to hunt you down despite the fact that he is dead, just because he simps hard for your summoner. And while any rival in Pokemon would count, the Bulbapedia shows that you must fight Hop 10 times throughout the Sword and Shield games, whereas most rivals are only fought 4 to 7 times, so Hop, bit of a clingy bitch. The snakes. Those who trespass, the betrayers, and the unfaithful. The ones who you put all your trust in only to have them throw bones at you in the single most sadistic manner as you make your way through the last corridor of the game, sans Undertale. Or they mercilessly cut down your entire battalion of friends and allies. Jan on guard, bravely second. Lastly, there's the ones who are good in bed. The boss is so overwhelmingly satisfying they have you looking like this afterwards. The incredibly simple but sublime movements of the Sisters of Battle present the most satisfying fight in Hollow Knight. And if you've ever played Ratchet & Clank 3, you already know the most banging boss is Courtney Gears. She is so fire that she drops a pop music video to precede the fight.
Yeah, what's up, people? It's Courtney Gears. Are you feeling me, robots? I'm feeling you. I see the future, and what do I see? Robots going crazy across the galaxy.
She is a queen. She is an icon. My God. This boss does an amazing job of hyping you up for the fight, but in many cases, bosses are something you rarely feel prepared for. This doesn't always diminish their value though. Much like love, you rarely get foresight for what's round the corner, and when you go a while without feeling it, you can at times build an anxiety hoping for it to arrive soon. But as you probably already know, there is no rushing this. I don't think there's any boss that has been improved by expectation, and there is no person that I have loved more before I met them than after. Whether a person or a boss, the intricacies of their character often lie just beneath the surface. And if you're lucky, hopefully, you'll find an unforgettable one. The sweeping background in Iris's champion fight, the billowing fields in Sword Saint Ishiin's fight, and that bit in the Azrael Dreamer fight where it goes. Oh my god. This video, for all intents and purposes, is a nostalgia trip, and I think an important part of memories is less about what happens and more about how it makes you feel. I know, just to take an example from a second ago, the Sword Saint Ishiin fight, which is the final boss from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, I remember that took me forever, but I don't remember the details of it. I just remember feeling this overwhelming sense of accomplishment when you finally fuck up the bad lad. Often when you beat bosses, especially particularly difficult bosses, it's when your brain enters a flow state and all you are is part of the game in that moment. And as is the theme of this video, I think part of that experience is comparable with love. The bits of relationships that stick with me the most are not the events or the activities, it's the feeling. It's remembering what my head felt like when I was so enraptured by another person. I remember being in a kitchen with somebody else's tears on the floor and saying the words, "You are so easy to love," and meaning it. I remember the butterflies and the sting of nostalgia. That's all this is, really. Love and bosses are both just stings of nostalgia. It's a feeling that you carry long after the initial experience. And for the 15 or 16 minutes you have generously given me to watch this video, I hope you feel stung. Peace. Hey, would you believe I was stupid enough to open my Patreon again? I finally realized that I can put it on a setting where it only charges people when I actually produce something, so I don't feel like an arsehole if it's just going on passively. So, with that in mind, I'd like to thank my 3 patrons, Lexicorp UK, Grasscracker, and Quote Cannon. See you in the next video. You say I'm crazy, 'cause you don't think I know what you've done. But when you call me baby, I know I'm not the only one.